Hey, good morning. So we're getting ready to start this. This is only about 14 slides. A couple of them that I will actually just breeze through, so you'll have me a little bit shorter here today. Normally, when we do this in class, we would there's going to be some hyperlinks within here, as you can see, even on the first page here, narrated overlay. So instead of jumping over that content, you will actually find those in your assignments. And there's a few within here as well for discussion boards. So know that for this specific chapter, you actually have 3 assignments that you'll need to complete, and then also on top of that, 1 discussion board. And again, this is just to make sure that we cover the content that I would like to in class, and so we'll be a little bit shorter here, but you'll be a little bit longer on your assignments. So here we are with chapter 3. I'm just going to go over some of the learning objectives. We're going to talk about the Community Corrections Act and what that's actually meant when we talk about that. We're going to sort of compare the main types of diversion programs and identify their advantages and disadvantages. We're going to talk about a little bit about the different ways that they're probation. And as you can see, the topic on the chart here says community corrections, diversion, and probation. And right away, you're going to hear me just sort of talk about some concepts of this class is called corrections. And like in some of the previous assignments, we've gotten a lot of feedback of they did these bad crimes, so they should be thrown away and never to be heard again. Well, obviously I just want to take this conversation with you is that they did do bad crimes. That's why that they've been caught, or that's why that they're serving their community. But we, as a responsibility, as not only but mankind, but to make sure that they are corrected, because that's the idea, corrected. And sometimes even corrections, even if one cannot get out, or they might be serving a life sentence, it's to make sure that a humanistic view to ensure that they continue and can even be maybe a productive citizen within the prison community. Okay, so that's sort of where we're headed in this, and that content is something that we'll talk about continuing on through the remainder of the chapters, is this humanistic view. So in this, I'll actually start this off with the man that's at the bottom, John Augustus. It's just a really super neat story on John Augustus, because we would not have community-based corrections if it was not for John Augustus. And I just want to make sure we get the year right, but basically in about 1829, John himself was in a courtroom for an event. This was happened in, looks like Boston, Massachusetts. I've watched some video on this from a past class. We got some discussion about it, but it's just a really super neat story on how something can be born out of an idea. So John was inside court, and there was a man that was getting sentenced for basically being a drunkard. And John was a businessman within the community, and he knew that he did not want this person who he knew just maybe had fell on hard times to essentially just get sentenced to jail. That there was a realization that there's a this is a life lost. So what John did is John put him to work, took him into his own home, and helped him with bettering himself. And the idea behind that is sort of then, what is again is that community corrections revolutions here is that's exactly how this whole thing got started, is that the community took care of their own people that may have fallen to the wayside. And so there's this ownership to um, humans, right? A very humane thought process is that, like, listen, these are our people. We need to take care of one another. So I just thought it was really interesting. I know the book talks about it here, the showpiece that I had a video on. Literally, he would go into court, find drunkards, prostitutes, people who stole, and basically set them up with how to actually live life and try to live it lawfully and legally, and also teach them a vocation so that they could better themselves and find self-worth. So it's just a really interesting concept. Even this point, I think over the next 18 years, John actually had 2,000 people that this had spread out to, where they had brought in and he had helped rehabilitate. I mean, that is just unreal in that time. That they were able to do that. So, and that what happened is that they had that on a, like we talked about earlier, on a bail and a bond, that he would essentially the judge would defer what it is that they would have for their bond to get out. So, and then retracing back up to the top of the slide here, there would be something called judicial reprieve, where after that person was sentenced, the judge could actually suspend the judgment and maybe consider pardon for an offender or a new offense. And essentially what that means is that, like, if they end up doing good and bettering themselves, like, we're going to maybe even just get rid of their sentence, or we're going to, we're just going to get rid of their sentence, where it would essentially be expunged. Obviously, this is not for like murder or rape and stuff of that nature, but at the same time, like, the context of what a charge sentencing does for a person on trying to get a job these days by employers, it's those are the things that still need to take place today, and they are. So, a couple other things is we talked about it last chapter, but being released on your own recognizance, or being released on your own sureties, that has to do with giving a bond and your own recognizance bond, or your personal recognizance bond. Those are essentially two words that are being used in today's court, where somebody is promising the court that they'll come back. They'll come back on their own recognizance, or somebody that may have skipped out on court after they may have exhausted their recognizance. They essentially would have to post a surety, and that could be that of property, that could be that of a car, it could be that of a home, it could be that of a bail bondsman as well too. So anyway, that I just wanted to just sort of offer those up. But again, the story on John Augustus, that is the highlight of this slide. Great story. So I just sort of threw this in here. It's not something that we're going to cover in class, so I'm just going to skip through this specific slide. This has to talk about Jason Kidd, who, if you follow basketball at all, was an amazing NBA basketball star. He got struck into a telephone pole after he was drunk driving in 2012. He actually is the coach right now of the Dallas Mavericks, and a great coach at that. But he was released on his own recognizance. So this in 2012 was a big issue. And now today, people are all getting recognizance bonds, and hardly anyone is staying in jail while they're awaiting their sentencing or their court dates. And that's because of what this slide specifically says, is that, do you believe that judges are influenced by the status of celebrities when considering court sanctions? 100%. 100%. Should we hold individuals who, I believe the rest of this says that
in the public's eye are more accountable, or should we hold them more accountable because they're in the public's eye and we can use them as an example of what will happen to you? That was something that we just brought up in a class for discussion. It's not anything that we're going to hold here today, but I did want to bring up the ideas that how things have changed, where somebody today that's in a DUI type situation may also, because of their own recognizance, just get let out because of COVID, because of fairness, and not having your status or money being able to influence the judge. Okay. Yeah, so now we get into the Community Corrections Act. You can read here, 1973, and please do read through it as well too. But I think like some of the idea of this is that there was a concept of reintegrative philosophy, and that was that approach of like, hey, we need to get offenders back into the community as quickly as possible. And the reason why we need to get them back in as quickly as possible, is you can see this down here, is that we as a society know that the longer that people are away from their community, the farther they're going to be when they come back. So if we can reintegrate them as quickly as possible, again, with something of a community corrections type situation, listen, you've done bad. This happened. So, but understand, like, we're here as a community for you to try to get back in. And again, this is a very humanistic approach on this. So said person, let's say that said person is a military vet, and they're dealing with some mental health issues that is causing them to get a drunk driving type situation, where it's an alcohol related situation because of what happened to them overseas or on seas. I'm sorry, or on our land. They're dealing with some PTSD. So there's actually courts set up for what's called vet court or military court. Has nothing to do with the military, but it has everything to do with the corrections, realizing that the person who has a military past has more of a possibility to get involved in criminal misdemeanor type stuff because of what had happened to them while they were over in theater. So I just think that that's again a great step to communities again to drop back into what John Augustus essentially was looking for to do. So what I think is also interesting here is that you see how it says community corrections, and so why do this? So essentially the idea is that like they want counties to take responsibility on having more people and to take care of your people where this took place, where the event took place in. And you can see here, like it says, legislatively authorized. It provides for citizen involvement, so you can look on boards of there to make sure that companies are involved in it. There's local planning. Those are all understand that it is cheaper. Let's put it this way: it is cheaper for states to put money into communities to have these community corrections, and in Kalamazoo there's what's called KPEP, and you'll actually see me talk about that later in the discussion board, of instead of housing these people in jails or possibly in prisons, it's to get them at halfway houses and stuff of that nature, where they're involved in community corrections rather than that of being in prison or jail. Yeah. Okay, so again, the idea behind diversion, it's a rationale, the rationale for diversion. understand, again, we're going to continue to talk about this humanistic view, which is the right view to actually view this from, this exact lens. So it avoids the harsh impact of incarceration. What I want you to understand is that, like, when you get caught for something and you get found guilty, no matter, if the person, it was brutal that the person did, it happened because of some reason. Okay, it happened because of some reason, whether that be money, anger, drugs. It happened for some reason. It could be a mental health issue, but that is the harsh impact to the actual person itself, as they're acting out because of blank. And we need to really get down to the root cause on why it is that this has happened and address that. We can lock up bodies all day, and as we've seen in the last chapter, of how much the United States locks folks up by means of what's called incapacitation. So the second point on here, it talks about provides a wide range of alternatives for decision makers. So what ends up happening is, like, not just one person will actually make the decision on what's going to happen to this person. They would get released essentially to, like, a community corrections place. They would be brought into intake. They would get down to that root problem, and then give a program to this person, in hopes that, saying, like, this is going to be the best alternative way for them to better themselves, to get back in society. And again, that provides for a more justifying justice, because, as I said before, things are starting to lean towards more restorative justice rather than a penalizing and incapacitation justice. We're going to talk about this some more. I won't let the cat too much out of the bag on that. But again, now here it deals with the economic, social, and personal factors associated with crime. Those are all the root causes of what we talked about just a few minutes ago. Yeah, so you'll have an assignment that's very close to this. But for right now, which again, we would do this normally in class. So we're going to talk about some of the diversionary programs that they have. I'll just sort of give you some ideas on what this is. So true diversion is, I want you to understand, is that it means that the when a crime is committed, that the person in sentencing will have her criminal prosecution dropped upon the completion of the program. So again, there might be something that, like, you find this a lot. I think I talked about this in a past slide, where somebody who's under 21 gets caught with alcohol. So they are going to try to help that person out. It might be a one-time offense. They get assessed, and they go through a situation of a program where they may only have any type of contact where they have to stay clean, and, like, maybe go to AA or NA or something of that nature, whatever's in that particular town, and in successful completion of that, they actually drop the charges altogether. So there's that one, minimization of the system penetration. So essentially that, again, is another, it's very close to the true diversion program. However, there is minimal contact with that, and that might be something of a drug court, which we're going to talk about that, how this actually has a lot to do that. But it might have to do with minimal mental illnesses as well too. So there's a lot of things out there that the courts and evidence-based studies have seen that that they realize that, like, hey, here are the root causes of this, and if we can address this first, we can hopefully have it so that folks don't have to go and get the stigma of being in jail. I want to talk about real quick about like dispute resolution programs. One of the things that we have to do with dispute resolution programs does have to talk about, I'm going to call them, sometimes they can be like anger management type situations where let's say let's say that we have two owners that are in have been getting into a I'm going to say this. Let's say that we have a a person who owns a home and a leasee that lives there as well too. And during that situation, there's been some physical altercations that have been taking place in there, or there's been some stealing or some taking of money or not paying and stuff of that nature, where the person could end up getting their could end up getting charged in the case and found guilty, but really the person, like the person who owns it, is literally just looking for that to get their money out of it. That's what they're looking for. So they're using the court system in order to make that happen. They have the right to, but they're also using that to make that happen. So that would be an example of that. Deferred prosecution. That is, again, something that ties into both true diversion and minimization of the system. But essentially, that means that in the event that all of these things take place, we're going to sort of set this aside. If you complete it all, you're going to get a lower sentence than you would of actually just getting dropped. But it's that same concept of true diversion, except like in true diversion, it would actually be dropped. Deferred prosecution, you're still going to get prosecuted, but the idea is that if you complete all this, we'll lower that down. And we see a lot of that. We see a lot of that in drunk driving type cases. Another area that we might see that in could be also, I talked about anger management a second ago, it was a little out of context, but we might see that also in like domestic assault programs where a person, like they're dealing with mental health issues to have them become extremely angry and sort of head off into a direction. So after that might be alcohol induced, that might be just because they may have some mental health issues that cause them to take off very quickly and get violent or very vocal. And so they would have anger management that they would have to complete in order to get their final sentencing. The treatment alternatives to street crimes, that's something that's, I guess, sort of local to specific towns. But for us, that basically is talking about drug court. We have drug court in here, and that's a specialized courts as well too. Is that if you get found guilty of drug-related offense, they're going to try to get you to drug court first to make sure that it's not a problem and that you can become sober from drugs and that you can continue to participate in community. And there's programs for that. If you get caught 15 times, no, that's not going to happen. These are like first-time offenses for literally most of all of these, because you should have learned and you should have stuck into your program, and that's when people end up getting caught up. So again, specialized courts, we talked a little bit about that, where you have VA, Veterans Court, there's also a mental health court, and there's also drug court. So yeah, and so probation, again, this is something that's, obviously I think we're all pretty familiar with what this is, but essentially you would end up getting a sentence of probation where they're not going to send you to prison or jail, but they're going to give you probation. But in the event that you don't get this probation done and completed successfully, you will end up having to go to prison. So they would say essentially, we're going to give you 2 years probation. If you complete this probation successfully, you won't go to jail. If you don't complete this successfully, guess what? You end up going to jail or you end up going to prison. So most of the time, again, this obviously this is under community supervision, but most of the time you're going to have financial restitution. Of I got upset with Tuffy Muffler, which is a car repair shop, and so I took a brick and threw it through the window and smashed it. Well, that's $1,000 for that to fix, so they're going to make sure that I pay that. Community service. Let's say that my specifically what I did was I got caught dumping, a bunch of trash along the side of the road. They dug through my trash bag. They found the receipt from McDonald's in there. Went to McDonald's, found out my credit card, and found out it was me. So now they're going to send me to community service of picking up trash along 131 for certain weekends of the day. So that's what my sentencing would be. Drug and alcohol testing, essentially what I'd have to do is go urine drop or breath test at certain, I might have to go to a police station, I might have to go see a probation officer. They actually just have people that do this, and that's all they do. They watch people go pee, or they give a breath test in them every morning. And then they have to have regular employment. I understand, like, this is one of the hiccups of it, is that if you have to mark the box that you committed a felony, not a whole lot of places are going to want to hire you. Specifically if it had to do with drugs and it had to do with our alcohol problems, or it had to do with stealing or something of that nature, or that they're just not going to want you to be there. So that right there is a huge barrier for folks to end up completing their probation, because if I got caught drunk driving, understand that also that I probably lost my car. So if I lost my car, how can I go get a job? And if I can't get a job, how am I supposed to do financial restitution? So these are some of the barriers that we have in completing probation. Probation populations, today more than 4 million are on probation. I can let you read through this. Although crime rates are declining, the number of people on probation continues to grow. Why? What are the advantages? So this is something that we would talk about on page 71. And who usually gets probation is on 72. So these sections, I'm not going to read them. I want you to go to your book. This is something that you will actually talk about in your assignments. So I would make sure that you go to page 71 and 72 so you can ensure that your brain is in tune and you can give good answers on that. So you can see that the places that these are actually concentrated in, you can see good old Michigan are in there. So I thought this was super interesting, though, that more than a third of all probationaries are from these states. Some places they just don't believe in it outside of these areas, but Michigan is one. So if you're interested in living in these states, you got a better chance to be a probation officer. So you're going to see this as well here too. This is going to be in your one of your assignments, and so you're going to have to answer this question. And I'm not going to go into it a whole lot, but I want you to go ahead and read through this, and you're going to have to answer it. Let's put it as easy as that. So again, if you have done some reading within the chapter, and this is some reflective and thought, some from a humanistic view, you're going to see that you're going to need to sort of follow up on some of that last question when we were talking about aging out. And so now it's not really aging out, it has to do with people that have severe social problems, drug use, and mental illness. So looking forward to seeing your answers and your research. This is going to be very research heavy. You're going to have to put some effort into this one. I think it should probably take you maybe 45 minutes to complete this exercise, maybe a half hour, but it's something we would do in class. Yeah, at least get started. So yeah, so what ends up happening is that after, like, we're talking about like the PSI and stuff like that, and we talked about that last, and that's the pre-sentence investigation. So they do like a risk assessment on you to see if like you will be able to complete this, and you're going to see that there has been a decline in the public confidence, because essentially what happens is that for probably one of every 50 people that go into these type of programs, they end up still going out and causing more crimes. I mean, I know specific cases where people have went on to these deferred programs and just never even showed up to anything. So the judge gives them the chance because that's what the public wants, and it's the humane idea to have that happen. However, what ends up happening is that they just don't even complete it. They just go on and commit more crimes. So there is a risk management system that really focuses on regulating and controlling offenders, that rather than providing treatment systems. And so it's a really interesting concept, because there are, what you understand is there are like different branches. So because of somebody that might be low risk, they are going to be more of a deferment. So that's going to be a little bit higher risk. They might be on electronic surveillance where they have to wear a tether, or they may have a camera inside their outside of their residence and so forth. But this is the new way of doing things, is that you can be in home and serve your sentence there. And guess how much cheaper that is than going to prison or to going to jail? It's a lot cheaper, specifically because it's not you, the taxpayer, that's paying for all of this. If you want to be on this program, you got to pay for it. So there's fines and costs that are involved with it that you fund instead of going to jail. Okay, administration or probation, another just informational slide. Approximately 2,000 adult probation agencies, or some run privately. So you can see there's a local administration and so forth, but we really want to like sort of focus on what's called the privatization of probation. And that's where things are headed right now, and is a very dangerous spot to be in, because of the closing of the private prisons, which Biden just brought in, which I don't think that's a terrible idea. I will never tell you what my political affiliations in, or whatever it is I believe in. But I will tell you this, is that I end up looking at everyone individually. So let's put it that way. So looking at the privatization on probation, you're going to have a YouTube video on there that you're going to watch, and you're going to talk, and you're going to learn some concepts on essentially what I would always say is follow the money. And so I'm just going to sort of leave that right there. I want you to go and watch that video. It's one of your assignments, and then you're going to give me some reflective thoughts that from the video that's there. But this is going to be an eye-opener for you, which is, I think it's going to be sort of neat. I'm going to skip back up to one. So some of the smaller areas will have combined probation and parole departments. Kalamazoo is not like that on the district court side. However, on the circuit court side, there is a place just west of the county jail, and they essentially, that's where KPEP is located, or at least their main branch, and they're all in one house. So it's sort of nice because it's a one-stop shop for everyone to be there. And so that way, if everyone is all in one building, where you have the deferred people in one building, I'm talking about the officers, the ones that are running the programs, probation and parole department, they can all work together, and you can really just walk over to somebody else's desk on the other side of the building. It makes communication a heck of a lot better. Unfortunately, like, that only happened in the last 10 years, 15 years for that I was involved in, and where it used to be in several different areas and several different shops. And so the communication wasn't really well at all. So
The effectiveness of probation. Yeah, is probation effectiveness? Recidivism is definitely low for those that are on probation for a misdemeanor. Although for felons, though, the majority are rearrested. So I don't like, even so, I don't think that that's a big problem to me. I think that you should give somebody a second chance. And because of the stigma that takes place for being a felon. And if you can, even if it's 30% that gets out, and I know in different areas and different cultures, it might be a little bit different. Excuse me. However, like this is the right thing to do for certain crimes, of course, right? Not murder, rape, kidnap, stuff of that nature. Probably not a really good idea. But if somebody is stealing multiple TVs on a push out type crime from Walmart, again, that's something that we could. It's still a felony, but at the same time, it's something that we should look at and try to get to the bottom of for the roots on why this has taken place. And obviously, it's very gender specific. Women are more likely to receive probation for drug or property offenses. Anyways, to improve the effectiveness of probation, though, they're going to need more financial resources. You're going to see that's going to take place because of the housing of prisoners cost a boatload of money. So this will continue to happen. So great job to go into, right? Credibility with public and judiciary. Judges don't want to just throw bodies away. The public is becoming more socially justice interest with a humanistic interest. Before the semester is done, I'm going to make sure you get a tattoo on your arm that says humanistic view, because you're going to hear me continuously talk about that lens. And then it's also, as you can see, it's a priority in research. So the idea is that they want things to be what's called evidence-based decisions. And you're going to see that no matter where it is, topic that you're going to, whether you're studying biology or you're studying criminology, but we are going to have it so that you're going to be able to do research. And we're going to base our decisions on research as judges and prosecutorial staff on what the statistics are telling us is the right way to handle things. Excuse me. Yeah, so like contemporary programs, I'm trying to find where those essentially, they're on page 82, dipping into 83. So essentially what happens is that so there's deferred sentencing, which this is something that we've already talked about already, but there's some other things that are called like shock probation. So what they'll end up doing is that you've heard this shock straight program that's on TV from time to time. So they might get an offender and who might be like maybe a little cocky or something of that nature. Well, they'll end up having them spend maybe a week, 2 weeks in prison to say, hey, if you don't get your stuff straight and you don't complete your probation, this is what it's going to look like for you. So there's bench or unsupervised probation. I don't see that at all anymore. Where that's being taken place at, I have no idea. But obviously there's something that is, and a bench probation is something that the judge takes care of. The judge, that might be in like smaller towns, like maybe in far west in the UP or something like that, but I just don't see it. It just does not happen in any type of updated society. It's going to be very community based rather than from the bench. And when they talk about the bench, they mean the judge. Split sentences, I definitely see that where they're going to say, hey, you're going to have 30 days in jail and then you're going to have probation afterwards. And then if you complete that probation, you don't have to then do your other 30 days. So if you get sentenced 60, you'd have 30 days of jail. You'd have 2 years of probation. If everything works out, then you'd have no sentence, no jail time on the backside. If you screw up, you then get sent to jail for the rest of the 30. Intensive probation, I definitely see a lot of that because of the offenders that I have had to deal with over the years.
Intensive probation means that you're dropping urine every day. You are dropping your breath every day. You might have daily or weekly or phone check-ins. You may have to show up every week in order that you have to drop every day, every 2 days. And once those became not so that you're doing well, they will then break that up. So essentially, you will end up having to do that once every 2 days, once every 3 days. And so it's a good situation. It's a trust situation, and obviously we want to make sure that folks do get back on track. So, like one of the researches that you're going to do in the assignment here, I just wrote these down. These are something that is innovative programs that are in Massachusetts, and you can find that on Exhibit 3.4 on page 83. I want you to follow the assignment for this, or you're going to do a little bit of write-up on these. And then you're going to do your own research in another assignment where you're going to like look for a town, and I think I alluded to this earlier, you're going to look for a town within the United States, a larger town, and you're going to talk about the programs that here, and you're going to enlighten me on them. So you're going to give a little bit of a step here by learning about some of these on page 83, Exhibit 3.4, and then doing a little bit of write-up on them. And then you're going to do your own research from other cities. Well, this is the last slide. And like I said, this is not going to be super long. I think we lasted 40 minutes here. But you are going to be a little bit more heavy, assignment heavy in this specific chapter. I'll see y'all next week. See ya.